start out with this young man here. His name is Nathan Gentry, and at the time this picture was taken, he was 6 years old, and he had just been diagnosed with a neuroblastoma, a pediatric brain tumor. My master's thesis is on the topic of survivor. I'm looking at the construction of the meaning of survivor from the perspective of adult survivors of pediatric brain tumors. And again, my name is Angela Zwiers. So today I'm just going to run through a few things that I have planned. I'm going to start with some background information, some literature review, continue with the purpose and objectives of my project, and then I'll go through the methods that I've taken so far in this project, some preliminary results that I've found so far, and then some concluding thoughts and discussion at the end. So brain tumors. 300 children in Canada are diagnosed with a brain tumor each year. The most common types of brain tumors are ependymomas, gliomas, and astrocytomas, and the most common types of treatments include surgery, which can be a craniotomy or biopsy, as well as radiation treatment and chemotherapy. Brain tumors can be benign or malignant, benign being non-cancerous, so slow-growing and very non-aggressive. Malignant brain tumors are very aggressive and are considered cancerous and fast-growing. Brain tumors can also be primary or secondary. Primary brain tumors are where the brain tumor cells arise within the brain itself, where secondary brain tumors are where the abnormally growing cells arise elsewhere within the body, and then they proliferate and travel to the brain. These brain tumors are malignant. Also, brain tumors can be graded on a scale of 1 to 4, so 1 being very benign, very slow-growing and less aggressive, 4 being very malignant, very aggressive, and very dangerous. Brain tumors are very unpredictable. They have varied specific diagnosis based on where they're located in the brain and what types of cells make up that brain tumor. Also, just as much as they are diverse, there's diverse treatment procedures, risks, and success rates for each. Symptoms for brain tumors are very unique to the individual. The most common symptoms include nausea and headaches. However, symptoms can be totally off the map, where someone might experience severe temperature fluctuations within their hands, sensations, sort of things like that, or extreme or constant hiccuping throughout the day. Just based on where the tumor is, it will affect different parts of the body and how they function. Late effects for this population are various. After treatment, children and adolescents who have experienced this sort of thing go through several different physical, psychological, and social deficits based on their outcome from treatment or based on where the tumor was located and how much damage it did itself. So as you can see, some physical late effects include hearing loss, infertility. Psychological can include depression and anxiety, and social problems can include a sense of isolation from peers and difficulty fitting in with friends. Also, these different sort of late effects affect each other. So when a child experiences physical deficits, they may also experience psychological as well as social deficits from that physical deficit. Now moving on to the definition of survivor. What is a survivor? I believe this term is overused, and it's found in medicine, research, and basically everywhere else. You can be a survivor of cancer, a survivor of abuse, a survivor of a natural disaster, also from a reality television show. So what does this term actually mean, and is it appropriate to categorize everybody with that term? Survivor is also equated to cure, so having a sense that the problems or experiences are over. There should be a consciousness of survival and successful survival for this population as they're developing through their lives and gaining a sense of identity. There's a need for a definition. We need to look at this survivor term as a phenomenon or an experience with phases based on the subjective experience of each individual. Also, we need to develop sort of an idea of a healthy survivor identity, and looking beyond the 5-year time frame, which lots of researchers and lots of scientists use as a category in order to define survivors. So if they've lived past 5 years of their last treatment, they can be considered a survivor based on physical grounds. But they may also be experiencing late effects, psychological, social difficulties as well within their lives. So the purpose of my research is essentially to construct a meaning of survivor from the perspective of those who have had a pediatric brain tumor. And a second purpose of this project is the fact that I was myself diagnosed with a pediatric brain tumor at the age of 16. It's actually right there. You can see it under the cerebellum. So I wanted my master's research thesis to have some personal relativeness to myself so that I could do a really good job on it and really care about what I'm looking at. So the objectives of my project, I want to understand the social processes of survivorship based on the lived experience, as well as examine the influence of the brain tumor experience on survivor identity and quality of life of these individuals as they transition from childhood to early adulthood. And finally, to generate emerging theory that identifies a comprehensive range of factors that influence the meaning and definition of survivor. So the methodology I chose was a constructivist grounded theory, and this is Charmaz herself, and I chose to use the Charmaz method, in which constructivist philosophy aims to understand the multiple realities of human beings and how they socially construct their reality. And also, the role of the researcher in this case is a transactional process where I'll be co-creating findings with participants. So in that case that I've had a similar experience, that's how I would like to integrate my own ideas into this project as well. And grounded theory is essentially when analytic categories are grounded within the data, and themes and categories arise from the data that I obtain from participants. So some data collection details. Recruitment, I hope to have 10 to 12 participants by the end of all of this, and each will have had a pediatric brain tumor, is a resident of Canada, and is between the age of 18 and 30. And the way data collection works in my project is that we meet, or I send them a package of information, which will include the demographic questionnaire that they fill out, as well as a journal book, where over the course of 2 weeks, they fill out the demographic questionnaire and make journal entries, about 10 of them. And then they report back to me after 2 weeks, and we do a 1-hour interview, approximately 1 hour. It can go over or below that. And then I have the option of doing a second interview as well, if gaps in the research arise. So making sense of the data. This is the stage I'm at now, is analysis, and it's quite onerous as it's a constant comparative method. So in that, I'm comparing codes to codes, codes to categories, categories to categories. And the tasks that I'm working on include initial and focused coding and in vivo coding, as well as memoing, categorizing, and theorizing. The strengths and limitations to my project is that, yes, I do have an insider perspective, which is a strength, and I can obtain rich data with an interactive process. But it's also a deficit, it's also a weakness in a sense, because I bring my own bias to the project. However, I am checking in with my supervisors and advisors on a weekly basis in order to counter this bias that I have. And we just discuss what I've found so far within the research and what types of themes and topics are coming up. So results, I have some preliminary results, and after I've interviewed 6 participants, they tend to be between the ages of 22 and 30. 4 are male and 2 are female. And the types of tumors that they've had are listed here. And one is actually unknown because she was so young when she was diagnosed. She's not quite sure what the actual medical definition was, but she's going to get back to me on that. The 3 of them are independent and living on their own, and actually 3 of them are dependent. That's an error. Some late effects that they have include headaches, nausea, all these types of ear pain, difficulty with balance, loss of fine and gross motor function. But everyone I interviewed did experience some sort of health deficit, even after the fact in their early adulthood stages. So this speaks to me that there still are struggles going on even as they're growing older. Some results of the findings. Again, it is a constant comparative method that I'm working on right now, but some emerging themes of my study include all my participants just want to be normal. They don't want to be treated specially or differently than anybody else. Sure, they've gone through a traumatic experience, but they still want to fit in with the crowd and be treated normally. Also, they pointed out an importance of the subjective experience. So you can't really categorize everybody into the same survivor category. It's based on their subjective experience, like in how much they've gone through, how many surgeries they've experienced, how many late effects they've experienced. Also, one participant noted that there's ongoing treatment, and in order to be called a survivor, you have to have your tumor removed, where she still had her tumor, so she was considered as surviving. Also, levels of suffering was another topic that arose, where those who suffer more can be considered a survivor, where those who suffer less, with less late effects and less traumatic experience, maybe are not quite as fitting for that word. Also, a very interesting young man that I interviewed decided that warrior was a more appropriate term instead of survivor, because he wanted to make sure people knew it was a constant battle. He was constantly fighting, trying to just live a normal life and be as functional as he could. And coping abilities, and this was an interesting point too, is that every one of my participants noted that you have to have a positive attitude every day. As soon as you think negatively, it gets you in a downward spiral of depression and just sad thoughts. So they noted that having a positive attitude on a daily basis was very important to be a survivor. And also telling of the illness experience. One of my participants said in particular that once you tell your story to another person, that's when you become a survivor, because they totally understand your experience with this illness. So in conclusion, so far, the meaning of survivor as constructed by those who've experienced a pediatric brain tumor may be different from those who label them. And by understanding the lived experience, hopefully we can determine the appropriateness of this label for this population, as well as recognize the health needs of these individuals and potentially help survivors develop a healthy survivor identity and to improve their quality of life as they develop through their early adolescent and adult lives. So if you want to ask me any questions or like to talk about this, see me after the show. And thank you to these great people, and Western and Lawson as well.